All right, so let's take a look at some special right triangles that we have. So when we have a right triangle that has two 45-degree base angles, the sides that form the right angle are called the legs, and the longest side, which is then across from the right angle, is the hypotenuse. And when we're working with these, we can use the Pythagorean theorem, but if we apply the Pythagorean theorem without numbers to a 45, 45, 90 triangle, we're going to find that it's isosceles, which we already knew. So the legs are x, and then the hypotenuse is x radical 2. So whatever we have for the legs, we multiply that by radical 2, and we've now got the hypotenuse. Now let's look at a couple of examples. Here, if we have leg 1 is 8, well, it's a 45 degrees, so this has to be 45 degrees. So this has to be 8. So the hypotenuse is 8 times radical 2, or 8 radical 2. It works as simple as that. Let's come down and look at a little more complicated one. If we have 3 radical 2 for the legs, we multiply 3 radical 2 times radical 2, 3 radical. That's going to equal 3 radical 4, because when we multiply radicals, the inside goes with the inside, the outside goes with the outside. The only way you can get rid of the radical is to pull out perfect squares, and radical 4 is a perfect square. It is 2 squared, so we end up, instead of 3 radical 4, we have 3 times 2, or 6. Let's look at another one. What if we have a hypotenuse and we want to find the legs? Well, we know the legs are x. We know the hypotenuse is x radical 2, or the leg times radical 2. So to go from the leg to the hypotenuse, it's the leg times radical 2. And if it's multiplying going one direction, to go in the other direction, we have to divide. So we will get 5 radical 2 divided by radical 2. And in this case, radical 2's, they cancel each other out, and the leg equals 5. Pretty simple stuff. Come down here. Let's have another example. If the hypotenuse is 2 radical 2, what is going to be the leg? Well, we're going to have 2 radical 2 divided by radical 2. The radicals 2 cancel, so x equals 2. What if we have like this, the legs are radical 2? Well, we're going from the legs to the hypotenuse, so we have radical 2 times radical 2, and that's going to equal radical 4. Radical 4 is just 2. Let's look at one more quick example. Here we have a square cut by a diagonal. Because the sides of our triangles are the same, we know the angles are the same from an isosceles triangle. Since we already have a 90, these are the same. There's only 90 left. They got to be 45. So D is going to equal 8 radical 2. But what if we had one where the radical did not cancel? So say we had the hypotenuse was 10. We wanted to find the leg. So we would then divide by radical 2. We can't leave the radical in the denominator. So we multiply that by radical 2 over radical 2, which is 1, because any number above itself or divided by itself is 1. We're just going to go straight across. And we get 10 radical 2 divided by radical 4. But as we've already seen, radical 4 is 2. So we have 10 radical 2 over 2. 10 is an even number. We can further reduce to 5 radical 2. And we know that inside goes with inside. Inside the radical goes with inside the radical. Outside the radical goes with outside the radical. So we are perfectly legal and we are done. And we're going to move on to our second type of special triangle, and that is our 30, 60, 90 triangle. In our 30, 60, 90 triangle, the short leg, and the legs are the two sides that form the right angle, is going to be x. And the long leg is going to be x times radical 3. So to go from the short leg to the long leg, we multiply times radical 3. And the hypotenuse is going to be 2 times the short leg. So to go this way, we're going to multiply by 2. And then we're going to divide in the other direction should it become necessary. Now let's look at some examples. Here we have the long leg is 9, and we want to find the short leg and the hypotenuse. And as we know from above, both the hypotenuse and the long leg are factors of the short leg, so we got to find the short leg first. So if we multiply by radical 3 to get this way, times radical 3, we got to divide by radical 3 going the other way. So the short leg is 9 divided by radical 3. We know we can't leave the radical in the denominator, so we multiply by radical 3 over radical 3. We get 9 radical 3 over radical 9, which is going to reduce to 3. So 9 radical 3 over 3. 9 is divisible by 3, so we're going to end up with x equals 3 radical 3. Well, after getting that, we know that y is just 2 times x. So 2 times 3 is 6. And then we got to bring up the radical 3. So 6 radical 3 for y. So we've got a couple more examples here. If we have radical 3 as our short leg, to get to the long leg, we got to multiply radical 3 times radical 3, which equals radical 9, which equals 3, because 9 is a perfect square. And to get from the short leg to the hypotenuse, we got to multiply by 2. And because we have one outside and one inside, we just put them together. Because outside goes with outside, inside goes with inside. Let's look at another example. Here we have, oops, I forgot to, two 30, 60, 90 triangles. And we know that because we have a right angle down here. This is 60 degrees. This is 60 degrees. So these have to be 30 degrees. So we know we have an equilateral triangle cut by a perpendicular bisector. So to find the height of this triangle, well, we have a short leg and a long leg. So to get from a short leg to long leg, we're going to call this h. H is going to equal to radical 3. Because all we're doing is either multiplying by 2 to get the hypotenuse or radical 3 to get the long leg. One more example where we start with the hypotenuse. So we have the hypotenuse. We want to find x and y. Well, we know that the long leg is the short leg times radical 3. The hypotenuse and the long leg have no relationship whatsoever, but the short leg and the hypotenuse is twice the short leg. So we're going to divide by 2. So we got 12 radical 3 divided by 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6. We still have the radical 3 there. So y equals 6 radical 3. Now to find the long leg, we're going to take 6 radical 3 and we're going to multiply it by radical 3. So we've got 6 radical 3 times radical 3. The two radical 3's go together. So this is going to be 6 radical 9. Radical 9 is just 3. So that's 6 times 3, or x is going to equal 18. And we are